If you believe you've heard every military story there is, stop scrolling right now, because this one flips power, patriotism, and pride on their head. And before you go another second, hit subscribe and stay with us, because stories like this, stories about hidden strength, American resolve, and the moments that redefine respect are the reason this channel exists, and you won't want to miss what happens next. The sun had barely cleared the horizon at Naval Base Coronado when the joke left the Navy SEAL's mouth, tossed casually like a coin into the morning air. A harmless bit of sarcasm meant to pass the time during an inspection line that felt longer than usual, and when he looked at the woman standing near the motor pool, wearing civilian clothes and holding a clipboard that seemed wildly out of place among rifles, rucksacks, and rigid posture, he smirked and said, "So, what's your rank, ma'am?" expecting a laugh. Maybe a sharp comeback, maybe embarrassment, because everyone could tell she didn't fit the image. And in that instant, no one noticed the way the air seemed to thicken, how a senior chief nearby stiffened, how a lieutenant froze mid-step because the woman didn't laugh, didn't bristle, didn't correct him. She simply looked at him with a calm that felt earned the hard way and said her name quietly, not her rank, just her name. And somehow that single word cut through the morning noise sharper than a command, and the SEAL chuckled, shaking his head, ready to move on, unaware that he'd just poked the surface of something deep, buried, and dangerous to underestimate, because her name carried weight in rooms he'd never been invited into. Weight measured not in stripes or bars, but in lives saved, missions altered, wars nudged in different directions. And as the inspection continued, whispers rippled down the line like an incoming tide, subtle at first, then urgent, until a master chief broke formation and walked directly toward her, his face set not with anger, but with something closer to reverence. And when he stopped, squared his shoulders, and rendered a perfect salute, the entire base seemed to inhale at once. Boots shifted, conversations died, radios crackled and fell silent, and one by one, without an order being given, sailors, officers, and operators snapped to attention and followed suit, saluting her name, not because they were told to, but because they knew. And the SEAL who had made the joke felt the blood drain from his face as understanding crashed over him in slow, brutal waves, because he realized this wasn't a protocol drill or some elaborate prank. This was history walking quietly through his morning. And as the woman returned the salute, not crisply like a career officer, but with a measured nod that carried gratitude and sorrow in equal measure, the base commander arrived at a jog, breathless not from the run, but from the urgency of being present for this moment. And he addressed the formation, voice steady, explaining that the woman before them was a civilian only in title, that she had once worn no uniform by design, operating in shadows so deep even their existence was classified, that her work in intelligence, strategy, and field coordination had shaped outcomes the public would never read about. Operations where failure meant not headlines, but funerals without names. And as he spoke, the story unfolded in fragments and memories of a young analyst recruited out of obscurity for an uncanny ability to see patterns others missed, of a woman who volunteered to embed with special operations teams, not as a fighter, but as a mind, absorbing terrain, culture, and enemy psychology until she became a force multiplier no weapon could match, of nights spent in forward operating bases where her plans rerouted convoys minutes before ambushes, where her insistence on delaying a strike saved a platoon from walking into a trap, where her quiet voice over comms steadied men trained for chaos. And the SEAL remembered stories he'd heard in training, half-myths about a strategist known only by a call sign that commanders trusted with impossible decisions, never imagining that legend would stand in front of him in jeans and a windbreaker, holding a clipboard. And as the commander continued, he revealed the twist that tightened every chest in the formation, that she was there not for ceremony, but for no. He revealed the twist that tightened every chest in the formation, that she was there not for ceremony, but for closure, that this was her final visit to the base before a long overdue retirement, because years of carrying the weight of outcomes had taken their toll, because the same instincts that saved lives had also forced her to choose which lives could be saved. And the room, no, the entire open expanse of concrete and steel, seemed to bow under the gravity of that truth. And the SEAL felt something unfamiliar burn behind his eyes, a mix of shame and awe, realizing that while he had trained to kick down doors, she had trained to hold doors closed, to decide when violence was necessary and when restraint was the braver path. And in another twist that rippled through the ranks, the commander disclosed that the joke-making SEAL had unknowingly been part of one of her most controversial decisions years earlier, an extraction rerouted, a mission altered at the last pieces second, a choice that had kept his team alive at the cost of another objective. And as their eyes met, she gave him a small, almost apologetic smile, as if to say she remembered every face tied to every call. And the SEAL understood then that respect wasn't always about visible authority, that rank could exist without insignia, forged instead in responsibility and consequence. And as the salutes finally lowered, the base returned slowly to motion, but nothing felt the same, because a joke had cracked open a truth they all needed to remember, that greatness often walks quietly, that the strongest leaders don't demand recognition, and that sometimes the most powerful moment on a military base isn't the roar of jets or the bark of commands, but the collective decision of hardened warriors to honor a name spoken softly. And as she walked away, unescorted, unassuming, the SEAL stood frozen, knowing he would tell this story for the rest of his life, not as a cautionary tale about jokes or protocol, but as a reminder of humility, of the unseen backbone of American defense, and of the day an entire base saluted not a rank, but a legacy.